This video was brought to you by Brilliant. Amid a turbulent news cycle, there is some good news for Kemi Badenoch. While one of her recent predecessors, Liz Truss, only lasted a mere 49 days at the helm of the Conservative Party, Badenoch has now surpassed 100 days in charge, meaning that even if she were ousted today, she would not be the most ineffective leader in her party's history. Unfortunately for her though, this is where the good news ends. Because as things stand, she's currently presiding over an unpopular Conservative Party, one that's in battle not only with Labour, but also Reform. Her presumed strategy of doing and saying nothing has resulted in a continued downward spiral for her party in the polls. Her performance at PMQs is being frequently outdone by her backbench colleagues, and a selection of her own party have legitimately started writing op-eds asking whether she even wants to be leader. With all of this in mind, it's genuinely worth asking, has Kemi Badenoch actually got that long left as leader? Hey, do you kind of hate us? Well, watch us respond to your criticisms, from bias to advertising or pronunciations, in our dedicated criticism response video. It's linked in the description. Now, the first thing to note here is that Badenoch is still relatively new to the job. And let's be honest, the job she inherited from Rishi Sunak isn't exactly the easiest. After all, in 2024, the Conservatives won the fewest number of seats in their history, after 14 years in office. Recovering in the polls was never going to be easy. It required a long-term strategy of slowly rebuilding trust within the electorate and offering a viable, attractive, alternative vision for Britain to that being offered by the governing Labour Party. For her part, this is something that Badenoch does plan to do between now and 2029, but she doesn't want to rush anything and make the same mistakes that her predecessors did. To some, especially those outside of the Conservative Party, it would make sense for Badenoch's colleagues within the party to give her this time. The thing is that fundamentally misunderstands how the Conservative Party actually works. There's a reason why, since Ed Miliband resigned in 2015, Labour has only had 2 leaders and the Conservatives have had 6. That's because the Conservatives are hyper-focused on success and topple leaders that they think aren't making changes fast enough. Following the landslide election victory of Tony Blair in 1997, the Conservatives appointed William Hague as leader, only to resign after gaining a single extra seat in the 2001 general election. Ian Duncan Smith was then appointed, only for him to be voted out by his colleagues in 2003. Michael Howard was then appointed, only for him to resign after losing the 2005 general election. It's understandable then why William Hague, of all people, described the Conservative Party as an absolute monarchy moderated by regicide. The point we're trying to make here is that while ousting Badenoch after just a year would be speedy, even for the Tories, it certainly wouldn't be out of character for the party. If anything, it would be the revival of a long-standing tradition. This is precisely why articles that have been written in the last week that claim that Badenoch could soon be in trouble are actually pretty credible. One of the most prominent papers to make this case was The Sun, who revealed that one of Badenoch's shadow cabinet ministers explained that Badenoch only has until September to turn things around, otherwise a leadership election will be called. So exactly what needs to happen now for Badenoch to actually lose power? Well, firstly, she needs to continue tanking in the polls. Ultimately, this is the key driver of discontent among her colleagues, and is ultimately what caused so many of her predecessors to lose power so swiftly. To do this, she'll need to continue being unimpressive at Prime Minister's questions, and continue allowing others, whether that be in her own backbenchers or in other parties like Reform, to steal the limelight. Another surefire way to worsen this polling is to make absolutely no further ground on the Reform question. We've seen Reform over the past few months make serious headway in the polls at the Conservatives' expense. Farage is just far better at grabbing attention than Badenoch is, and is starting to essentially represent the right of Parliament. He's a more confident speaker than Badenoch, and is better at pinning the Labour government down. Badenoch was elected on the assumption that she'd move right and challenge Farage on his own turf, but she's not exactly done that. Instead, she's been relatively respectful of him and just let him do his own thing. If she continues to do this, Reform will likely continue to rise in the polls, and Badenoch will continue to fail to combat it. Secondly, for Badenoch to lose power, she needs to do badly at the local elections. The local elections are set to take place on the 1st of May, with 25 councils up for election. Of these 25, 16 are Conservative run, and 3 are minority administrations with Conservative leaders. However, there's a distinct possibility that the Tories could lose a number of these councils in these elections. Given that Badenoch has not long been in the post, usually a leader like her would survive losing these councils. However, speaking to Tory MPs, The Sun found one saying, "I thought that she'd survive the May elections even if they were bad, just because she hasn't been in post long. But now, I'm not so sure." Therefore, there's a good possibility that momentum could start building in the aftermath of these council elections, in which the Tories will almost certainly lose a handful of councils given the current polling, that now is the time to remove Badenoch. Even if she does manage to hang on though, she won't immediately be out of the woods. Instead, this would simply build into the wider discontent over her leadership, suggesting that she doesn't have the necessary skills to fight against the negative Tory polling. The third key thing Badenoch needs to do to lose power is for key ministers in her shadow cabinet to resign. It's all well and good for popular opinion in the party to turn against Badenoch, but generally Tory MPs hold on until the tide has turned against the leader. A good example of this was Boris Johnson. We made plenty of videos speculating about him being toppled as Prime Minister back in 2022. But it took until the resignation of his Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, and his Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, for the party to finally turn against him. And although it doesn't always have to get to this point for a leader to be toppled, high-profile resignations really do help with the process. Once the dam's been breached, MPs feel safe and secure enough to send in their own letters of no confidence, triggering a no confidence vote, and then, if successful, a leadership election. So, all in all, if she doesn't turn things around, there's a very real chance that she could be facing a leadership election later in the year. Now, the thing is, often in politics, we need to understand a wide variety of topics to truly grasp what's going on. And fortunately, our sponsor this week, Brilliant, can help us do just that, with thousands of lessons in maths, science, programming, and AI. And not only that, their interactive lessons teach you by doing, instead of just asking you to mindlessly memorize stuff. In turn, this helps to build your critical thinking skills and become a better thinker. For instance, Brilliant's newly updated maths courses help you to establish a strong foundation in algebra. It then helps you to build on this, teaching you how to conquer calculus, all while maintaining an emphasis on problem solving and reasoning. The thing I like most about this, though, is that their mathematical courses help you to develop your mathematical intuition and fluency, skills that you can use in the real world. As we've told you before, data skills are absolutely necessary for navigating the modern world, and Brilliant is the best way to get them. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/TLDR, or click the link in the description. And by doing so, you'll get 20% off an annual premium subscription.